What is up, my bloodthirsty patients? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host and Dr. I guess I'm going with this now, Dr. Zach, and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge, with some petty revenge thrown in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story's called Denied My Workers' Rights, the company lost a lot of money. Posting this on behalf of my buddy who said it was okay to post it here after he typed it out. Alright, I hope this goes here. I've never posted before, but it seems like it fits here, and honestly, a friend suggested it a while ago. So for a bit of context, you need to know. This company was pretty corrupt, and they ended up getting away with some shady crap for quite a while before this. It's also worth noting that before working for them, I was training at a martial arts club and loved doing so despite how tough the training could be. I had every intention of hopefully going pro one day. This is ultimately what fueled my anger. This happened a few years ago. I'd been working for this company for a couple months and was finally starting to adjust enough to possibly go back to martial arts training even after working a 12-hour shift. I came in on my scheduled Saturday shift. My normal shift supervisor was away with his wife who had just given birth. The supervisor who was there usually worked a different shift but was filling in. They assigned me to my usual job, which I later found out from my physiotherapist nobody should be doing for 12 hours straight, especially if they're my size. I'm not a big guy, maybe 140 pounds, drenched. Normally, the job wouldn't have caused me any issues. However, that day I was stuck doing the same job with different material, which was well over the safe legal lifting weight for a single person. Around 3 hours into my shift, I'd started to experience pain in my back and one of my shoulders. I spoke to the supervisor asking to be moved because of it. They replied, "Sure, I'll see what we have available." They didn't bother looking. I'd like to state that this was a factory job. Something is always available, especially since we constantly found ourselves understaffed. Of course, with the job being my first official job as an adult, I wanted to make a good, lasting impression just as a pillow in case I needed it later in life. Over the course of my shift, I complained twice more, and even talked to my coworker that was right across the truckway from me about it. Eventually, she started assisting me with lifting my now normally used material, seeing as I wasn't able to do it steadily alone anymore. The pain I was in was intense at the end of my shift. I went home and relaxed before it really hit me hard. I have a high pain tolerance, to the point where I barely notice broken bones. This pain put me in tears and made it extremely difficult to move. I called into work explaining the situation and informing them I wouldn't be in for work the next day. And if the pain didn't start to diminish, I'd be in the hospital instead. I took some over-the-counter muscle relaxers and mild pain medication before going to bed. I had never slept so badly in my life, consistently waking up in pain and barely being able to move. I ended up being awake when my mom went to work. She worked at the same place. A family friend came over to check on me and we went to the hospital. I wasn't even able to lift my right arm up, so it was straight out at shoulder height with my other arm. It was just more pain than I could take while keeping enough strength to just barely stay on my feet. The doctor said it was an overuse injury and that I'd be fine in 2 weeks. They wrote a note stating that I was on modified duties for that time period before I'd be fine to go back to my usual job. I took it with a grain of salt since I was in more pain than I'd ever experienced before in my life, but I hoped he was correct. It's worth noting that they didn't splint my arm or give me any sort of medication, which possibly caused more work later on. I spent the next 2 days trying to rest as much as possible, still in a stupid amount of pain. Wednesday rolled around and I went in for work. My normal shift supervisor was happy to see I was alright and apparently had gone off on the other supervisor for letting something like this happen to one of his employees. I was assigned modified duties as the doctor instructed and went to work after being shown what I was doing. Around an hour into my shift, the pain in my shoulder got much worse. My arm started to go purple and I felt pins and needles. Constant pain in my joints from my shoulder all the way into my finger knuckles. This was sweeping pain and sharp stabbing pain as well. It got so bad that I started to feel nauseated and my vision was fading in and out. My coworker noticed this and asked if I was alright. I replied no and asked her to get the supervisor for me. I told the supervisor I needed to go back to the hospital and they said I'd have to fill out the incident report sheet. I asked if they'd get it for me and they said they would be back with it ASAP. At this point, it was around 8 a.m. I didn't see the supervisor again until 10 a.m. and they most certainly did not have the papers I needed to fill out, so I asked again. At this point, I was barely holding my composure, and again was told they'd get it for me ASAP. My coworker had started to get very worried about me and said that they honestly wouldn't have stayed half as long as I had at that point. But I like to do things properly and wanted to resolve things as quickly as I could, then leave. Over the course of the next hour, I asked multiple times to get this paperwork so I could leave for medical treatment. At 12:30ish, I'd had enough. I was livid and didn't give a crap about my language filter anymore. I spoke to my coworker and told her I was going to the hospital the second my family friend arrived to pick me up, and then pulled out my phone to call them right there. She looked at me and said, "Alright, I'll tell the supervisor after you leave, because this is freaking BS." She was angry that I had to sit through all this crap, especially for hours. My ride arrived and I went straight to the hospital. The healthcare leaves a lot to be desired here. I sat there for, I crap you not, another 5 hours before finally being pulled into a room where I sat another hour. My mother made it to the hospital before I was even looked at. The doctor finally came in. I'd been in the hospital for over 6 hours at this time. They had me do exactly the same thing as the original doctor did and told me it was simply an overuse injury. I was freaking done looking back. I don't know how I managed not to flip my crap at this guy, but I told him to run some sort of test because this was BS and clearly getting worse. The doctor reluctantly agreed to do an ultrasound on my shoulder and 10 minutes later, wheeling in the machine. Almost the second the screen lit up after placing the ultrasound on my shoulder, he said I'm ordering WSIB, or Workplace Safety Insurance Board, to provide 8 weeks of physiotherapy, which is the maximum amount of time they can order for WSIB to cover here. I found out from my physiotherapist that I had severe nerve damage, a partial tear in my rotator cuff, and knots in my back preventing blood flow to my shoulder. This crushed me, because it means that not only was it possible I'd never be able to do what I dreamt of doing in life, but if I could, it may become aggravated later on, possibly resulting in a worse injury. I asked if I'd be able to go back to MMA after therapy, and my therapist told me he didn't know for sure, but depending on how well I recovered, it was still a possibility. Fast forward about a month, I found something out about the supervisors mentioned so far. They both actually tried to comply with my requests, but the owner micromanaged things in a way that made them unable to do it. Until this point, I had considered possibly suing the first supervisor because they didn't comply with my rights as a worker, and I was injured as a result. This piece of crap owner had these two under his thumb. He'd been known to fire people for no reason, and would make something up to cover his tracks. I started to take some mental notes about things that were not safe in that place, i.e. just about everything. The major ones were obvious though. They had dangerous chemicals all over. And I mean these chemicals were all over the place. And the chemical room was 1. Not properly isolated, 2. Not stored properly, and 3. Not even ventilated. Furthermore, they had a freaking deaf guy driving the forklift. I didn't use this because the guy was a great person and I didn't want to screw him over. But at the time, I made a mental note about it and considered. A couple days later, I had another physiotherapy appointment and had to go into work because they had a labor board return to work specialist come in to assess what my modified duties happened to be and what my original had been. We first started with my original job. The freaking owner put a different, far lighter material there and hid the freaking normal material, which was several times heavier. I specifically stated that the material wasn't what I'd normally worked with, and even stated the darn serial number on the material that told you where it was stored. We looked in that location and sure enough, it was empty. Freaking empty. I sighed, slightly defeated, and we moved on to the modified duties I was doing. The owner stated that I was doing said job, legit counting parts, and each bag only had 500 pieces in it. I knew for a fact that was BS and called him out on it in front of the man. He grabbed one of the bags already sorted and put it on the scale, thinking he'd be able to pull a fast one on me. Sure enough, it read 500 pieces. I looked at the specialist and told him that bag was already sorted. I then grabbed one that wasn't and placed it on the scale. There was something like 1,200 pieces in it. The owner was clearly not happy about it, and the specialist kind of had a slight grin on his face. I know for a fact that the bags normally had around 1,400 to 1,700 pieces in them. The owner got extremely lucky that it was one of the few bags which didn't, because it was just under the limit for the amount of weight I was allowed to lift on my modified duties. After that, we were done there, and on the way out, I was walking with the specialist since my ride was already there. I said it was too bad that the material I usually worked with wasn't in stock. I stated that it was usually packed to the brim. He replied it was a bit odd, but he was only there that day. I think he knew things were a bit fishy there. He couldn't do anything without evidence though, so he gave me his business card and told me to call him if anything happened or I had any questions. At this point, I was pretty furious that the owner had clearly pulled some shady crap and, from my perspective, attempted to blatantly discredit me. I was honestly done with this place and didn't want to work there. However, I decided to give the benefit of the doubt and wasn't completely hell-bent on destroying him yet. I'm a bit too patient. And honestly, I figured things might work out for the better. But I still kept making mental notes. Oh, that doesn't have a safety, that saw doesn't have the proper gloves, etc. Then my physiotherapy ended. These freaking scumbags, on my next shift, right freaking after physiotherapy ended, decided to put me on the job that injured me. The pre-shift room was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop in the parking lot. I said alright, but if I experience any pain or discomfort, I expect you to move me. I went to work, again the pain started, and I went to my supervisor demanding to be moved. I did this 3 times. They were livid they couldn't fire me. Ultimately they said, and I quote, "If you can't handle this job, then perhaps it's not the right fit for you. Everyone else here is able to do it." The supervisor most likely was doing what he was told to. Because again, if you butt heads with the owner, he doesn't take it too well. So I asked him if I had to fill out any forms regarding it. Sure as hell I got the forms in less than 2 freaking minutes. Signed and left. But I was far from done. I could have let crap slide, but they freaking put me on the same freaking job that injured me. I was sure as hell not fully recovered, and I wasn't about to possibly destroy any chance I had of recovering again to do what I wanted in life, even if I wasn't close to assured. Now, me and my mother made an anonymous call to the regional fire marshal, providing some information that piqued their interest and informing them that the owner liked to hide things during inspections. We also made a call to my father, who was away on business. My father, who was in the military for well over 2 decades, made some calls to friends in high places, and they pulled every military contract the company had. The fire marshal showed up for a surprise fire inspection and noticed very alarming things. He issued a boatload of fines to both the branch and the main company. The fines were in the 7 digits range and had 2 weeks to be paid. The owner had to pay the branch fine himself. They also ordered the branch to shut down until the issues were fixed. I found out 2 months after this that they now have over 30 labor board investigations going on, and their truck for delivery doesn't go out even half as much as it used to. Nobody lost their job over this, but several people I knew who worked there moved on to better jobs. Okay, so that was quite a story. 2,600 words almost. But wow. That was definitely worth a read, and I feel bad for the Redditor's friend, I guess, because that's difficult to go through, especially at such a young age, because they have aspirations that, you know, might not even be possible because of an irresponsible, inconsiderate owner, you know? But, you know, I guess things happen, and hopefully things work out in the future for this person. This story's called "Don't Like the Fact That the Cat I'm Housing for 2 weeks is Being Rambunctious Despite the Fact That Your Dogs Howl All Night / Every Night? Fine, I guess it's time for some revenge." I moved into my apartment last year around August. When I moved in, the landlord made it very clear that there are to be no pets on the property whatsoever. I quickly found that my neighbor doesn't care much for this rule, as she has a large mutt that likes to howl at all hours of the night. For over a year, I put up with this dog howling and never said so much as a word to her or the landlord. Last week, a friend of mine told me she was leaving town for an early Thanksgiving and asked if I could watch her cat while she was gone. I agreed. My neighbor had a pet, so surely we could be partners in crime. Nope. If you've ever had a cat, you know they get zoomies, especially at night. The cat spent a couple of hours each night running around the apartments making minimal noise. The second day I had the cat, my neighbor comes over and starts shouting about how, "I'll call the landlord if that cat isn't gone by tonight." I reminded her that her dog has made noise every night since I moved in, but she didn't seem to care. She said if I didn't get rid of the cat by that night, she would be calling the landlord the first thing in the morning. As soon as she left, I took the cat and all of its stuff to my girlfriend's house, and then immediately called the landlord asking if he had revised his pet policy. He said, "Unfortunately, no pets on the property." I then informed him that my neighbor had recently adopted a dog and it had been making noise. Less than 2 hours after my neighbor had been threatening me, the landlord was in her apartment and taking pictures of the damages the dog had done. Oh no, that's why you should always respect your apartment's pet policies. And if you're not gonna respect it, don't be a big ol' schlong and report on people that, are doing the same thing as you. I swear, man, some tenants are so inconsiderate. This story's called, "Roommate Kept Using My Stuff, So I Put Something Into the Toothpaste." I had this roommate who kept using my stuff in secret. I didn't notice this in the first few weeks, but soon realized that he has been not only using my toothpaste, but also fragrance, deodorant spray, shampoo, and all kinds of stuff from the fridge, ketchup, sauces, etc. It just didn't make any sense how quickly these different products emptied. He used them more than I did. For example, I only used the fragrance when I went out on the weekend, but after 2 weeks, almost a quarter was gone. Since I always had to leave early in the morning, he had the freedom to use whatever he wanted. One evening, I asked him about this. He denied everything with big surprised eyes and swore that he only used his stuff. So I had to set a trap for him. I chose the toothpaste tube because it was almost empty. I took a straw and poured a bit of salt inside. Since the toothpaste had already some kind of crystals inside, it was perfect for the salt crystals to blend in the mix. I placed the tube back where it was and waited for him to go brushing his teeth. There he went a bit before midnight. Started brushing, and a few seconds later, I hear gagging noises. And after a few more seconds, I heard him vomiting in the toilet. I guess he didn't like the mix of sweet toothpaste and salt. When he finally dared to come out of the bathroom, he was fake smiling as if nothing happened. And he stopped using my stuff after that. Or at least didn't use as much. Oh my goodness. Okay, so here's my policy regarding this. You can ask to use anything, and I'll probably say, yeah, go ahead. But oh my goodness, the concept of this, just the thought of someone just carelessly using your things, oh my god, that just drives me insane. I want you guys to let me know in the comments below any tales of, thieving, sabotage, you know what I mean? This sort of thing. Workplace, household, I don't care. Let me know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.